Welcome, pilots! This video is part of a series that will focus on fitting pirate faction cruisers for running combat sites. In this episode, I'll be shining a spotlight on the Phantasm, a peculiar faction cruiser that kind of looks like a cross between a fish and a Swiss Army knife. It has a strong afterburner bonus and specializes in medium energy turrets. In order to fly the Phantasm, you'll need both your Caldari cruiser and Amarr cruiser skills trained to at least level 2. Continuing to train Caldari cruiser will increase your velocity with afterburners, while continuing to train Amarr cruiser will increase your tracking speed with medium energy turrets. The Phantasm's roll bonus gives it a powerful boost to medium energy turret damage, allowing it to surpass the damage potential of any other regular or Navy Amarr cruiser. It also has the highest targeting range of any regular or faction cruiser, and its Caldari influence gives it a strong shield layer. With a strong slot layout of 6 mid-slots and 5 low slots, the Phantasm has a stronger shield tank, but it can still easily be armor tanked. There are 3 main fitting options you'll be choosing for the Phantasm. The first option is whether to use medium-range pulse lasers or long-range beam lasers. Pulse lasers have better tracking, allowing them to hit smaller targets a little easier. Beam lasers are good for long-range sniping and generally have higher DPS. Pulse lasers only have higher DPS when loaded with conflagration crystals. Unfortunately, these options, coupled with its tiny drone bay, can leave the Phantasm vulnerable to small targets with a tight orbit, such as spider drones. The Phantasm is also locked into dealing EM and thermal damage, putting it at a slight disadvantage when facing the Angel Cartel. The second fitting option is whether to use an active shield tank, active armor tank, or even a passive shield tank. I recommend a shield tank against Guristas or Angel Cartel, and an armor tank against Blood Raiders or Sansha's Nation. I personally fit a shield tank against Serpentis as well, though I imagine an armor tank would work just as well. And the third fitting option is your choice of propulsion module. The Phantasm's afterburner bonus makes it a more natural choice. But you might still prefer a micro-warp drive, particularly if you don't mind spending the extra ISK for a dead space module. Fitting both a micro-warp drive and afterburner could be an option as well, giving you the flexibility to both speed tank during encounters, or race to a wreck when in direct competition with another capsuleer. I wanted to test out both pulse lasers and beam lasers, so I chose to build 2 separate fits for the Phantasm. One with pulse lasers and an active shield tank, and the other with beam lasers and an active armor tank. Both fits are built to run as many high-security combat sites as possible, rather than specializing in any one particular site. This is the active shield tank fit I use to run any Serpentis, Guristas, or Angel Cartel high-security combat site, including the Angel 4 of 10 and Angel Vigil. It uses Tech 2 heavy pulse lasers with 2 Tech 2 heatsinks and 3 Caldari Navy Hornets to achieve just under 450 DPS with multi-frequency crystals. Switching to conflagration crystals bumps up the total DPS well above 600. A Sisters Core probe launcher is fit in the utility high power slot with Sisters probes. The active shield tank includes a Tech 2 large shield booster, Tech 2 multi-spectrum shield hardener, and compact shield boost amplifier in the mid-slots, along with 2 core defense operational solidifier rigs to get a shield boost rate of over 125 hit points per second. To make the fit cap stable, it needs a Republic Fleet large cap battery, 3 Tech 2 capacitor flux coils, and a capacitor control circuit rig. The final mid-power slot is a Tech 2 tracking computer, allowing you to improve your range, tracking speed, or both as you see fit. This fit is extremely tight on both CPU and power grid. If you're finding yourself short, you may need to replace one of the solidifier rigs with an ancillary current router rig for your power grid, or downgrade the flux coils to their compact variation for your CPU. If you wanted to squeak out even more DPS, you could replace the tracking computer with a cap recharger, and one of the flux coils with a 3rd heatsink. I'll be showcasing some footage running the active shield fit against some of the more difficult Angel Cartel combat sites. If you watch through the video with the Cinnaball, be aware that much of this commentary is similar, just tweaked a little to match my experience with the Phantasm. In the second room of the Angel Cartel-occupied mining colony, the Phantasm's damage output being primarily in EM and thermal is to its detriment compared to other pirate cruisers. I found it broke the Domination Excavator's tank in roughly 2.5 minutes with multi-frequency crystals. You could probably cut this down closer to 2 minutes with conflagration crystals. In the Angel Vigil, its strong shield tank is more than enough to blitz the second room. This is the active armor tank fit I use to run all high-security Blood Raider or Sansha's Nation combat sites. It uses Tech 2 focused medium beam lasers with 2 Tech 2 heatsinks and 3 Federation Navy Hobgoblins to achieve just under 420 DPS with multi-frequency crystals. Switching to Gleam crystals bumps the total DPS well above 450. A Sisters Core probe launcher is fit in the utility high power slot with Sisters probes. The active armor tank includes 2 Tech 2 medium armor repairers, a Tech 2 damage control, and 3 auxiliary nanopump rigs, to achieve an armor repair rate of about 108 hit points per second. The fit is cap stable, with a Republic Fleet large cap battery, and 2 Tech 2 cap rechargers in the mid slots. The other 2 mid slots are filled with enduring tracking computers, which helps to offset all the tracking disruption you'll encounter against Blood and Sansha NPCs. This fit is quite tight on power grid. If you're finding yourself short, you may need to swap out one of the auxiliary nanopump rigs with an auxiliary current router rig. And now I'll showcase some footage running the armor fit against some of the more difficult Blood and Sansha sites. In the second room of the Malzatah Monastery, you can sit outside of the range of the stasis towers while you zap away at the inner sanctum. You could warp out, bookmark the container, and warp back in a few minutes. I prefer to stay engaged, so I usually lead the cruisers around to one side of the room while taking out the stasis towers, giving myself a clear path to scoop up the loot. The Blood Watch site can be tricky with all of the stasis webifying drones and tracking disruption. I like to use the look at command on the webifiers and align so that I'm flying the same direction. This allows you to track them much more easily with your turrets, which will be helpful with so little light drone support. The tracking disruption isn't usually a problem until you've taken out the Militant Supervisor, which triggers the Commander Wave. In my run, no Dark Blood frigate appeared. When it does, I typically fly away from the mob and let it come to me. In the second room of the Blood Vigil, this fit has sufficient DPS to take out the stasis towers while they're still being repaired, though given their range I found myself using standard crystals. Against Blood or Sansha rats, this is where your primary damage, being EM and Thermal, shines, as the Station Manager's tank should break easily as well. In the second room of the Sansha 4 of 10, I found myself breaking the foreman's tank in less than a minute and a half. The second room of the Sansha Vigil is a bit of a struggle for the Phantasm. It doesn't quite have enough light drone support to be able to fully deal with the spider drones. While I did manage to stay engaged long enough to loot the excavation supervisor's wreck in this run, you can see how much pressure my tank was under when the battlecruisers had closed range. It would be much easier to bookmark his wreck and come back later for the loot. I have yet to try out a passive shield fit for the Phantasm, but at a glance it looks quite impressive. The use of Tech 2 power diagnostic systems ensures there is plenty of fitting room, while also keeping the fit cap stable. While the EM shield resistance is a little on the low side, my feeling is that all this extra shield buffer may still be sufficient to survive any of the blood or Sansha sights. So the passive shield heavy beam laser fit may well be good enough to serve as an all-in-one high-security combat ship. I've included all of these fits over on my website at RileyEntertainment.com. I do provide alternate fits for alpha pilots, but I only tested the Omega fits. I would caution younger players to fully train into these fits first, rather than trying to downgrade any of the modules. And that's all I have for the Phantasm. In the next part of the series, I'll showcase some PvE fits for the Stratios. If you ever need a little help running any combat site you find in high-security space, you can check out my comprehensive library of video guides right here on this channel. Stay tuned to Riley Entertainment for more EVE Online combat site guides, and smash that like button if you enjoy my content.